Welcome to Movies Are Life. I'm your host, Nathan Chandler. We are jumping back into our coverage of the 50 best rom-coms and talking about number 35 on the list, Crazy Stupid Love. And I'm just going to start off by saying I'm not ashamed of my New Balance sneakers. They are one of my favorite pair of shoes, and I think they're quite comfortable. But I'm really excited to welcome in my guest today, Andrew Hudson. It's been about 20 years, I think, since we have connected. So I'm super excited to have him on the podcast today. So two questions for you, Andrew. One,
Sure.
How are you? And two, do you own a pair of New Balance shoes?
I know I own many pair of New Balance shoes. I am with you. I like the support that they give my feet. But my wife picks out very colorful versions of these New Balances, 574s. That's my go-to New Balance. So I'm not just a gray and white guy, but I've got a slew of different colors. Your first question, I'm doing great, Nathan. How are you doing?
I'm great. Yeah, I am by far not the voice of fashion at all, but I do feel like this movie was made in 2011. I feel like New Balances have kind of made a little surge of being a little bit more popular, but I might be wrong.
Right. I think you're right.
Well, so Andrew and I were both in the same fraternity at Baylor back in the day. And I was trying to think, I couldn't quite remember. I feel like we kind of were interested in the same kind of stuff as far as like video and media and that sort of thing. Was that your major? And are you still interested in the same thing, doing the same thing?
Yeah, I was a film major at Baylor, SICM. I forget the actual name of our degree, but I just say I studied film. If you want to talk like 1960s Italian or French cinema, I'm your guy. I can do that for days. Rom-coms are also great. So yeah, I'm still doing that. I have been a creative director at a couple of different companies now, and so still neck deep in the media world. I get to lead teams, get to develop other creatives, and that's been a really, really fun spot. So creatives are super moody and super passionate and super creative. And then I've got the executives that don't understand them. And so I kind of stand in the gap a lot of, okay, this is what they really mean. And then I go and translate it to the other side.
Yeah, that's a very important part of an organization. That's something, I deal with quite a little bit. And I know you're into the podcasting world. Did you want to talk a little bit about that and where people can listen to your podcast?
Sure. So I started a company a little over a year ago. I've got a business partner. Her name is Rachel. And we started a social media marketing company specifically targeting the real estate world. And it's called Kangaroost. And we've got Kangaroost, the podcast. And we talk about marketing and leadership and a lot about real estate. And it is very, very localized. We've got markets in Nashville, in Memphis, and in Dallas right now. And so it's just been really fun to see something that you could come up with a kernel of an idea and see it blossom and grow has been pretty fun.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. Yeah, people definitely should check that out. And in the show notes, we'll include links to that if people want to check that out. So, jumping into the movie today. So I always think it's funny. I didn't think I quite realized the punctuation of this movie, but crazy, comma, stupid, comma, love, period. They actually have a period on that. It's number 35 on the Ringers list of the 50 best rom-coms. It's directed by Glenn Ficarra and John Requa. I'm just guessing that's how you say that. And and written by Dan Fogelman. If that name sounds familiar, he has written tons of films, but it's probably most known for the TV hit This Is Us. He was the creator of that. Yeah, and especially
the directors too. The directors are part of This Is Us.
Yeah, and so if you've seen This Is Us, I mean, it definitely, and watching this movie, you definitely can see the correlation of just, I think, juggling multiple characters and, highly emotional but comedic storylines. But this film has an all-star cast consisting of Steve Carell, Ryan Gosling, Julianne Moore, Emma Stone, Marissa Tomei, and Kevin Bacon. The movie description is as follows. A middle-aged husband's life changes dramatically when his wife asks him for a divorce. He seeks to rediscover his manhood with the help of a newfound friend, Jacob, learning to pick up girls at bars. That is definitely what the movie is about, but I feel like it has a few more narrative threads than that. But it was released in the US by Warner Brothers Pictures on July 29th, 2011, grossing over $142 million against its $50 million budget. It was well received by critics, which is hard to think of a rom-com making that much money these
That's
days.
right.
But yeah, so what's your background with this film? Was this the first time that you've seen it, or did you see it back then?
Oh goodness, I probably saw this one in the theater. I have seen this movie a lot. It is one of my more favorite rom-com. It is a guilty pleasure. I'm a huge Steve Carell fan. And so I think he is one of our best character actors out there right now. He can portray serious and emotion and silly and make it believable. One of my favorite movies is Dan in Real Life, and I think that's where I fell in love with Steve. But I think there are a lot of similarities actually with what I like to call triangle relationships. So we've got the Steve Carell, we've got Hannah Banana, and we've got, which is Emma Stone, and then we got the Ryan Gosling. Like there is a triangle there, and then we've got David Lindhagen and the Julianne Moore and Steve Carell, and so it's another triangle. Like there are triangles throughout this movie, and I think that is just a Dan Fogelman staple. I mean, This Is Us. It does that a ton as well. And so all of these intertwined relationships, I think is what makes this so fun.
Oh yeah.
I remember the very, very first time I saw it, and spoiler alert, here's the end of the movie. Emma Stone comes out and you're like, what? How? Ryan Gosling's there at the party? And you're like, how did all of this? I didn't see it coming at all. And it was brilliant. I loved it.
Yeah, it's you hit a lot of things there. I think the brilliance of this movie is just being able to toggle so many characters and storylines. And you didn't even mention, his son and Jessica, his baby. I mean, that's its own thing as well. And I think it is really hard to pull off so many
Marissa Tomei and yeah, I mean all of them are triangles, all of them.
Yeah, pull off so many threads, but the audience watching it, like you never get lost. You always know what's going on, and especially like the twist that you mentioned. I mean, I think it might be fair to say that it's, at least in a comedic movie, it has to be one of the most surprising but effective twists in a movie. I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And it was fun and surprising and heartfelt and silly somehow. And so you can you laugh a lot through the movie, but then like there are some heartstrings moments that tug at you, and you think, man, this guy just wants his family. Like he is constantly chasing what he might, how do we get all this back together?
Yeah, I've always been a huge fan of Steve Carell as well. I've always just been pretty amazed that so many people would example, David Schwimmer. I think he's a very good actor. He does a lot of stuff behind the camera as well now, but I mean, he is always going to be Ross. And
Right.
I think Steve Carell has become Steve Carell more so than Michael Scott, which is pretty amazing. Right. I haven't seen a lot of the current stuff that he does all the time. A couple of his Netflix shows I kind of thought were okay, but we did watch The Patient on Hulu. I didn't know if you saw that, but I mean, he's gone to a place now where we watch that with him, and the character in that, I mean, that movie is not funny at all. And so, but like the audience, I mean, completely, you can buy him in a comedic role, you can buy him in a dramatic role, and I think all the performances are good here, but I think without Steve Carell being able to do that balance of emotional and awkward and funny, I don't know if this movie would quite be the same.
That's right. That's a really great note there. Ryan Gosling's character also kind of plays somehow the guy that is the man's man. Everybody wants to be Ryan Gosling, but then also somehow plays the bumbling idiot at the end of just like, how you don't want to be like me. You don't want to do that. You don't want to, and so he's trying to get through the day. And you're like, man, that is an interesting shift in Ryan's character.
Yeah. Have you been are you a fan of Ryan Gosling? I know he can be a little kind of,
I think we all have to be, right? He's gorgeous.
he, he, he is a gorgeous man. But not just his character, but I also was thinking about this movie, and I thought, I just thought that everybody is just so well liked in this movie. I think that's what another good thing is, like that's impressive about this is that you really have a rooting interest for everybody except maybe Josh Groban. or Kevin Bacon. But I mean, to have all these like characters and like Ryan Gosling's character could easily be dislikable. Now there still might, you still might not be swayed by his charm watching it, but there's definitely an arc where he kind of switches gears and stuff. But
well, yeah, and back to the party at the end of the movie, he defends Steve Carell's character, and he's like, "Okay, you're David Lindhagen, great. I'm gonna punch you," and so that's another one of those likable moments of like, Steve and Ryan are friends. Cal and Jacob are friends, and so that is what helps us really like Ryan's character as well.
Yeah. Did you mentioned Marissa Tomei and some of the other supporting actresses, and do you like Julianne Moore and Emma Stone in this movie? Do you like all those?
Absolutely. I will say that Julianne Moore is the reason for the movie, right? So she is what caused all of this to happen. She had an affair with David Lindhagen and set all of the rest of this into motion. So without her character, we don't have a movie. I thought she did a great job. I think this was Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling's first movie together. They've done a handful, but don't quote. Okay. And so I thought their chemistry on screen was, they're a cute, fun little couple, which is why I think they've had so much success on other films as well. But man, they play so well together.
Yeah. Julianne Moore, the one thing I think she's good in this. I think she's an incredible actress. So if somebody, my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's 12, if she watches, she's never seen Julianne Moore in anything else. So I don't know if this performance would make her want to seek out other stuff. So I don't think it's her best stuff. But I think she's solid. And then I forget. I should have maybe looked up a little bit more about the Emma Stone canon, but this had to be probably a little early on. But you could see that she has the chops to carry a film. But I did want to ask you, as much as I do love this movie, there are a couple of things, like as much as I like the party scene at the end, but I'm going to specifically focus on Marissa Tomei. Okay. Like I like. I think her performance and the scenes with her are funny. It is so over the top. Sometimes that's the one thing for me with this movie. It seems a little imbalanced as far as like it becomes very like slapsticky, over the top. And I don't blame her necessarily because I do think the scenes are funny, but those scenes are the couple of moments where I'm like, it takes me a little bit out of the story. Am I being too critical there?
Well, the one maybe, when Steve Carell's character and Julianne Moore go to the parent teacher conference, and I think Steve there plays it so small that it makes it hysterical when she starts writing asshole on the board. And so, can I say that? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
No. And so I think that her bigness is then an opportunity for Steve to be very, very small, and his subtle reactions to, oh boy, like that those comments, I think made it brilliant. There were a couple of scenes with her where she is just a very big actress. But It works for me. Again, it's a rom-com,
Yeah.
and so you can be a little bit more over the top. It's not a romantic drama by any stretch.
Right. Oh, well, and I will say, I remember always having that kind of thought for whatever reason. Even when I saw this back in 2011, now watching it now, I will say that I have a lot of friends in the education system, and not anyone in particular. So if I have my teacher friends out there listening to this, and I don't even have somebody in mind, but I do think that, like, I just have a lot of friends that, just like we are at our own work, you're the teacher when you're the teacher, but outside of that classroom, a completely different person. And so I do like that aspect of just like, because you're professional doesn't mean you don't like to have fun.
That's
later.
right. That's right.
Yeah. So, some a little different aspects of the movie. This isn't necessarily a movie. Maybe I think of like having super like memorable quotes, but do you have a favorite quote that comes out of this?
I do, and we say it a lot. And be better than the Gap. When Ryan is doing the montage of Steve Carell's transformation, be better than the Gap.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I hadn't seen this. Probably Whitney, my wife's seen it a little bit more than I had. I hadn't remembered that, and I thought that was hilarious. That's a really solid line, and it's not a bad mantra to have in life. So
That's right.
yeah, it's okay to like the Gap. It's okay,
Sure.
but it's definitely good to achieve more than what the Gap has to offer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Don't settle. Don't
Yeah.
settle.
Yeah. It was real subtle, but one of my favorite moments was at the bar, and when Jacob takes home a lady, and he Steve Carell just says, "Good night, fancy face." Like, yeah, because Jacob says, "Come on, fancy face, let's get out of here." And then
Right.
for me, that was just really funny. I was like, I might just start saying that to people, even though they don't know what I'm referring to. I thought that was funny. So,
she probably spit in my drink. Yeah, she definitely spit in my drink. Yeah.
Oh, and I can't. I'm definitely not at the coolness factor that Jacob is in this movie, but how he phrases, let's get out of here. I don't think I could ever pull that off. I
That's
don't know.
right.
I don't know about yourself, but
No way. There's no way.
yeah.
He is much better at that than I am, for sure.
So this being like a favorite of yours, do you have any particular favorite scenes?
Oh goodness. The scene where Emma Stone goes back to Ryan Gosling's house, and she's like, "All right, how does this work? How do you pull this off time and time over again?" And he's like, "I don't have a move," and she's like, "You have a move." And it's a fun back and forth. We talked on it a ton already too. Just the end culmination party scene, I think is so brilliantly done. The entire movie is building up to that. And it's just it is a great scene. Even when the police officers show up, and you're like, man, it is continuing. It's not a moment. It is an entire scene that just hits and hits and hits. So those are probably my two favorite scenarios.
Yeah. I think even though I kind of dogged on Marissa Tomei, I really like the scene where he first approaches her in the bar, and especially finding out that she's sober.
Right.
Steve Carell is perfect, just like getting in that, like, hey, I'm gonna
awkward. Yeah,
I'm gonna be this, but then he just slowly or not slowly, he quickly unravels, about his whole life or whatever.
Right.
And we talked about the Gap, but I think that whole shopping sequence with Jacob and Cal is just great. It's just a good little montage, especially with the slapping and how that plays into the end. Just a good callback.
Yeah, that's right. The end was like, this is going to be fun, and keep slapping. And I would love to see the script on that. I would love to see how many times he's actually supposed to slap him, because I think they break a little bit there in that scene, because Steve just keeps slapping Ryan Gosling, and I was like, man, it's got to be a silly moment on set.
and you mentioned Alice, I had written down just the time of my life sequence.
Right.
Just there's probably not tons of screen time with Gosling and Stone in this, like
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
compared to the rest of the movie. And so that scene is really pivotal. And because the way it plays out, like you buy their relationship.
That's right.
We don't have to see them, quote unquote, dating after that moment. That scene is so strong that shows how that connection is made that you completely buy into that. Hey, this is like a relationship that will probably most likely end in marriage.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to track with this rom-com list, because now this is the second movie that has referenced another movie in it. So like, with Time of My Life, Dirty Dancing, with this one, our first movie was How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And in that movie, they're in the movie theater watching Sleepless in Seattle. So it'll be interesting to track these rom-coms and how much they actually reference other rom-coms to get their genuine moments. So, but I thought that was
That's a fun
interesting.
note. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I thought the scene with Cal, who's doing yard work, when she calls him, the kind of Emily, when she calls and does the fake call about the water heater issue, I
Yeah.
I love that scene. Just how genuine that moment is and everything like that. Although I will say, if Whitney called me about that type of issue, that conversation wouldn't gone as quite as smooth.
Well, I think it showed that they both still really cared about each other and they both loved and missed each other. And so I think that it was a really sweet scene for sure.
Yeah, I fortunately haven't ever had to go through a separation or a divorce before, but I just that,
Or
like,
lighting a water heater. Yeah, I've
yeah,
never done
right.
that either.
Right. But like it's just this movie can't help but think, like place myself in their shoes, just as far as like, regardless of like how much you might be fighting with that person, or how much you're in love with that person, just all of a sudden the sudden removal of your like everyday routine or even like
Yeah.
conversations, and like I just can't really imagine how jarring that would be. So I've
Yeah.
been it's been a while since I've done like travel for work, but I just remember in those times like how weird it is, just when, if I've gone like overseas somewhere and just having to keep that communication up. I've never done like the long distance dating thing, but yeah, that's I just can't imagine that. But I love that scene. It just kind of brings those feelings back home, so to speak.
Okay, one more scene. The very, very end, when Jessica, the daughter, gives the pictures over to Robbie, and like with a little wink of like, hey, this is that we're also gonna work out. So again, more triangles that continue to build in this relationship with Dan Fogelman. But I kind of wish that she hadn't given him the pictures as much as like, maybe I've just told him that she's interested in him or something. But I thought it was a cute way. So there you go. There you go.
That was always like kind of a tough watch for me as far as
Yeah.
storyline goes. And
Yep.
and I was actually almost surprised that they used the term sexting in the movie, because still I did kind of laugh at just the use of digital camera
That's right.
in this movie instead of like an iPhone
That's right.
or whatever. But probably one thing that does date this movie a little bit. But yeah, that uh, I don't know. Yeah, that's one that, watching the second time, I thought was, I guess, maybe handled as best as it could be. But if this movie was made today, I think they would kind of rearrange
Yeah.
how they presented that aspect of it. So
That's right. That's right. I agree with that.
I don't know if it's needed for the story. I feel like you could definitely have those feelings with the son and the babysitter, and even her feelings towards Cal, without driving that aspect. I don't know if they needed something for her dad to get that enraged over.
Yeah.
But
It does push it to the extreme. But I think that maybe she could have professed her love to him and her dad misinterpreting it, that Cal was professing his love for her. But yeah, it does definitely take it to the extreme limit of, I cannot believe that you are in possession of pictures of my little girl. Because as a dad of a little girl, I would go off the hinges at that guy.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it's all elevated and heightened, but is there a different way that they could have written that?
Yeah. And I know that you know they never show the actual pictures, and I know she was older when she filmed this movie. Actually, I read somewhere like her and Emma Stone are actually pretty close in age, but they were playing, you know, different character, you know, high school and then, you know, kind of a young professional in this movie. But I just any kind of movie that even like, I don't know, hints of like you filling in the gaps of that is
Right.
always kind of a weird angle to take. But you know, I don't know if I'm being too sensitive to that, but I don't think so. But
I don't think so. They were both born in 1988. So you're
oh,
right.
hey,
There you
look
go.
at that! Look at there. One time that I was actually supported by internet fact.
Movie musings.
Is your life PG-13?
Is my life PG-13?
Yeah, in this movie they talk, you know, a little bit about her Emma's Stone's Hannah's friend is kind of challenging her on like what's your life at? So what rating is Andrew Hudson's life?
Oh man, that is a great question. Um, Man. Well, I was gonna say that maybe my life is even more PG at this moment. But there are instances that are obviously coming up into my brain that push it a little bit darker than just PG. The fact that I've been able to work in creative industries, but within churches and within religious organizations, there, it PG-13, and there are R-rated things at times, I suppose, but we're not. It's not like Heat. Don't think that I'm shooting up banks or anything. But yeah, there. I think my life story would be a pretty boring documentary to watch.
Yeah, I always kind of jokingly uh I've thought to myself, I like reading a lot of nonfiction books, and a lot of those
Uh
are
huh.
memoirs. And I just
Uh
laugh
huh.
at the fact that if I wrote my own memoir, like how boring and how unpopular of a book that would be.
Yeah. Same.
I'm fine with that though.
Yeah, that's right.
I like that, and so I don't
Yeah.
need a lot of drama in my life. So, so are you a yard guy? Are you someone who's in the lawn a lot? I just laughed at Cal's character in here and just how
Yeah.
that's immediately like I kind of forgot about that aspect of this movie. And when they did the first shot of that backyard, I mentally went like, "Wow, that's a beautiful."
I do think that at some point in your life, maybe it's when you turn 35 or 40, whenever you get your first house, whatever that is, that I suddenly became a yard guy. I love mowing. I love planting new plants. And man, we do a fantastic job at planting plants every year. They die because we don't know what we're doing, and then we get to replant new plants every spring. And so maybe we're not supposed to be planting them in spring. Maybe that's the issue. But man, I do enjoy looking at good yards, but I'm not the most skilled. I have no green thumb, but I love it.
We yeah, Whitney and I, we've taken a little bit more ownership over our yard, and this, and really COVID was a big was a big factor
Yeah,
of that, you know, which was good. I think generally it pushed us as a family to be outside a little bit more.
that's right.
I love our backyard. One, because it's big, but also I don't like our backyard because it's so big. So it, you know, thankfully Whitney, we tackle the yard work together, because if one person did it, it would take a couple of hours just to weed eat
Yeah.
MO and stuff like that. And so anyway, it's one of those, like, I always kind of wish I you know, had a little bit more inclination to be passionate. I like the work. I don't necessarily like the time that it takes, and so sometimes I usually start thinking about all the other things that I could be doing. But
Well, and it's not necessarily just the time that day that it takes, but if I plant something like these are going to be pretty flowers in a month from now, and you're like, man, I've got to maintain these for a month. And then they bloom and they're like, oh, those are pretty. And then they're dead. And you're like, oh, that was a lot of work. Okay, well,
no.
next.
Yep. and how many people got to enjoy these flowers with
Right,
me,
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So a big aspect of this movie is also especially the first half of this movie is this bar nightclub scene. So it's been 20 years since I've seen you. So it might have changed. You never came across me as a big like bar or nightclub guy.
Sure.
Has that changed at all?
No. Maybe. There are definitely some nights that maybe these are the R-rated moments when our neighborhood is a pretty fun little group of people, and we just celebrated one of our neighbors' birthdays, and he rented out the entire upper floors of this one bar restaurant that we go to. And so, yeah, I mean, we had a lot of fun that night, and yeah, I don't know that I'm trying to pick up ladies there, but yeah, enjoying a cocktail or two is pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the like super nice place. We've had a chance to be like in Chicago before and go to a pretty like fun bar, skytop type of bar that's real fancy and that's nothing. But as far as like actively, I was glad they included the scene where he gets the bar tab at one time and you saw the price because just the sticker shock of that moment. And so that's like at those type of places, one maybe two drinks, but
That's right.
I definitely like a good sports bar with a good happy hour. Like what's on draft. That's kind of more my type of place, and people who know me will not be surprised by that statement at all.
Rom-Com Rankings.
Even in emailing you, this was a little tough because this movie has so many facets to it, so it's a little bit hard to nail down, but we'll try to do it. So
Sure.
the first one is romantic chemistry, and romantic chemistry in particular between the leads. I really thought you could go two aspects here. Steve Carell, Julianne Moore, or Ryan Gosling, Emma Stone. I know there's some other ones, but those are kind of the two main things. I don't know. Do you see this as Cal's story or Jacob's story or both, or what do you think?
Yeah, again, in true Dan Fogelman fashion, there are so many storylines. I'm going to throw out a different relationship that I think is interesting is Cal and Jacob. And so that is the one that he wants to be like Jacob. And so that's the one that I think is the most interesting to me. Ryan Gosling, Emma Stone, it's a beautiful relationship. Julianne Moore, how she turns at the end and she really wants Cal, and you can see them rekindling, and all of that is really good. Robbie and Jessica's relationship, I think, is just so innocent and fun, and they chase stuff. And so there are so many different relationships. I give 5 hearts to the relationship level of this movie. There are so many relationships. And I think that you can chase any of them, and they're a good storyline.
Yeah. Okay. I was thinking about that. I took kind of a similar approach, kind of a culmination of all of them. I ended up at 4 hearts because
well, shame on you, Nathan.
I know shame on me, but Ryan Gosling, Emma Stone, definitely like on fire there. But honestly, not their whole story. I like Steve Carell and Julianne Moore. I don't know. For me, I mean, I think they're good together. You can see the history there a little bit, but I don't know. There was something there that was just not like necessarily clicking with me. So I was still a little, they never, and I think kind of a good way, they never really explore. I mean, there was the relationship she had with Kevin Bacon's character, but like, there seemed to be more about like why they were getting a divorce, and but I kind of like that they don't super explore that, but that was kind of interesting to me. But it kind of makes sense at the end when you kind of realize how young they were when they get married, and regardless of where you are when you're married, it's always hard to keep up that spark. So knowing that they've been going, in this relationship for so long, it kind of makes sense that they kind of came at a crossroads, so to speak. But
That's right.
so that's why mine's just a little lower. So even though you're ashamed by me, but that's fine. That's fine. The second category is usually in these rom-coms, there's the best friend or the best supporting characters. Once again, this is kind of a little hard because, like you said, Steve Carell, Cal and Jacob, they're the kind of main catalyst here. But I think you're kind of right there, even though it's maybe not so much romantic. There's like a chemistry between them two. So how do you feel about this category?
So I took it down even farther and said, okay, if we've got our main characters, who then are supporting characters? You get people like Claire and Bernie, the Jessica's parents, even Kevin Bacon's character. I was not a real big fan of any of those three. Kevin Bacon is historic and a great actor, but at some level, it's also like when he walked on screen, he's like, here I am, I'm Kevin Bacon. You're like, I need you to be more in the movie rather than you're Kevin Bacon. And some of these other characters just rub me wrong as actors, and I can't really get behind much of what they do. Anyway, Josh Groban's character, I think he plays that guy so perfectly, though. And so I'm a fan of his performance. So it's a mixed bag for me. The extra, once you get outside of the main cast, the extras are a little hit or miss.
Okay, so where do you rate that? Well,
I didn't think about this part, Nathan.
Yeah,
I would probably give him a 3.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
kind of in the middle.
Yeah. That's where I lied, was 3 hearts. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. Kind of one a little more. It seemed like all of them were not quite on the same plane, and like you mentioned, Kevin Bacon just kind of goes off his baconish, just to make that character coast a little bit. Okay,
Can you think of a single movie that Beth Litterford is good in? She rubs me so wrong.
Okay, you gotta remind me.
She's the Jessica's mom. She's blonde. She's a comedic actor, and I've never seen anything that I like of hers.
Yeah, she's definitely like that. Who's that person? Because I definitely recognized her. At first, I thought I get her a little confused with Steve Carell's actual wife. But it's not her. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm looking at her IMDb right now. Yeah. And also Jessica's dad. I recognized him as well, and Marissa Tomei's over the topness, like we talked about, like it kind of works. His is a little it's to say it's on the nose. He's a little over the top for me.
Agreed.
He was in Fargo. That's right. He was Norm Gunderson. So, and that's the thing about him. I've seen him in things that I do like. So it's kind of like, I expect a little bit more from him.
Right.
So I always feel like a soundtrack's real important to a romantic comedy. This one, once again, a little hard to tackle because there's the original motion soundtrack, and then there's kind of all the music that plays in the movie, because I listened to the actual soundtrack, and so the Time of My Life, the 80s classic True, those songs weren't on the soundtrack. I don't know if you got to listen to it or not.
I didn't, and as you asked this question, I don't remember a single aspect of the soundtrack, and so I'm going to give this a 1 star for the soundtrack, but I'm going to say that the movie didn't need it. Can I say that?
Yeah, no, and it's funny. when I listen to the soundtrack, and the soundtrack is pretty much they're all songs with vocals behind them. It's not just a score, but the soundtrack is very much like the movie in that the first half of the soundtrack is essentially the music you would hear if you walked into a hotel bar, like
Okay.
like or one of those like fancy nightclubs that we talked about, where it's just that kind of it's not smooth jazz, but you're kind of like where does this movie come from? Like, how does this, even exist? And so, yeah. And then towards the end, it gets a little bit more lighter. And I would say a lot of the songs kind of reflect the time of 2011. I'm not a super huge like music historian, but kind of that indie rock type of feeling. And so it gets a little bit better, but yeah, I gave it 2 hearts just because there's nothing super familiar. And my favorite song on it was Just One Look by Doris Troy, which is a song like from the 50s or 60s. So if that's the case, the soundtrack is probably not the best one out there. So
that's right.
Yeah. I had it playing when Hallie jumped in the car and she just looked at me like, what in the world are you listening to? So anyway, okay, so a lot of romantic comedies have either like a chase scene or a big declaration of love at the end. I think this movie definitely has that moment. As far as the really, was it an 8th grade graduation? Is that what it was?
That's right.
Yeah. I probably at the time I was been like, man, this is a lot for a middle school graduation. I have since turned on those feelings because
you've experienced them.
Well, the amount of fanfare that goes, behind certain, years of the grade is, kind of spectacular to me. But how do you feel about this big declaration of love at the end of this movie?
Well, what I love about the Declaration of Love is that, yes, it is Robbie and declaring his love for Jessica, but it's also Cal declaring his love for Emily. And so, again, I'll broken record this. Dan Fogelman's ability to mesh storylines is second to none. And so he is allowing Robbie to declare his love and allowing Cal to declare his love. And it just, everything works. It just made it tied everything up in a nice little bow, as rom-coms do. Nothing is messy there at the end.
Yeah. So
5 hearts.
You giving it 5 hearts? I'm with you on that one. I just feel like it ties everything so nicely together. It like justly like puts everybody in the same room again. Like it makes sense that everybody would be there, including Marissa Tomei's character, with her gesture in the front row. And so audio podcast, you couldn't see that. So anyway, just imagine a blurred circle floating across your screen. Yeah. But no. And then I just, even the end and the way Cal talks to Jacob, and they're going to be okay. And, the callback where Cal gets to slap Jacob and, this is going to be fun. This movie just ended to me, and even with his son's look at the very end and how he goes off screen, cut to credits, it's like, how can you not feel great, after this movie? So I'm with you in there. Okay, rewatchability, the last category, is always a big aspect of it.
100%. Man, I've watched this movie a lot, and I love it. I don't know that I would put it in my top 10. I don't really know what my top 10 list would be, but man, it is something that just makes you feel good. It makes you smile. It is an easy watch. You don't have to think a ton about it. It's a really good 2 hours of your life. 5 hearts. Rewatch this as much as you can.
Okay. I would be there. This is probably where you're going to hate on me a little bit also.
Okay.
So
I'm prepared for that.
I do love this movie. As far as rewatchability, like I don't know if this is something that even though I think it's a very, very good movie, the 2 hour runtime is a little bit hard, especially for this type of movie, just to jump into, just to, kind of have on. So for me, like, I really like the story, but, I think you really have to kind of emotionally invest in it. I don't know if it's something that you necessarily can come in and out of scenes, but
Are you not normally investing emotionally in what you watch?
no,
How do you do that?
I do, but like if this was, I always use this as an example. I don't know if it's great, but if I'm in if I go in a hotel and I turn on the TV and you're up to the whims of cable TV and this movie was on, would I be inclined to just sit and like watch it like right there? I feel like if it was on the TV, I would be like, I really have to just sit here and take it all in. And so I just feel like I'd have to devote a little bit more of my emotions into it. So
That's fair. I'll give you that. It is a time commitment. But might I recommend, as you are on these travels that you go on, if you fly Southwest right now, you can do nothing but watch movies on your phone or iPad. And Crazy Stupid Love is available to you on southwest.com right now. So that's how I knocked this one out. So I rewatched it on the plane, and I couldn't do anything else. So I watched it there.
Good to know. So I make it sound like I'm in hotels a lot and I travel a lot. I really don't anymore. So well, just but I mean, you've talked kind of about your love and passion for this film. As far as just as a movie goes, taking it outside of this rom-com list, I think it's really, really good. So I've mentioned a couple of things that I don't think quite make it perfect, but I think this is one maybe that people don't talk about as much anymore. And I think if they went back and revisited, it would be one of those like I did this time, like, oh yeah, this movie is really good. But
that's right.
Recommendations.
Is there any kind of movies or TV shows or books that you like to recommend?
Oh goodness. I'm like you. I read a lot of nonfiction books, and but my quest for your listeners is to go watch old movies. Old movies are very fun. They have new technology that comes out in those movies, and so like marveling at how they did things is something that I like. And the storylines I think are really solid. They're not relying on special effects or big name actors. They actually have to tell a good story. So some of my favorites that I would love, obviously I talked about Dan in Real Life earlier. It's way up there on my list. 400 Blows is one of my favorite movies. And my number one is a movie called Blow Up. It's 1960s Italian, Michelangelo Antonioni. It's a brilliant movie. I think that what they communicate in it is just really, really fun. So go watch old movies and then remake them. How about that? Take a good one and remake it.
Yeah. So we can call you Art House Andrew on this podcast.
No, oh gosh, no. So a guy on my team would always put me to shame when we start talking about old classic movies. But yeah, he is Art House Tyler. How about that?
Really going far back. Are you a Buster Keaton fan at all?
Oh, come on. Yeah.
So I've been working my way through the AFI 100 Greatest Movies list, and
Sure.
the General is on there.
Yep.
And so it's been maybe a year or two ago, but I asked the girls, hey, sit down and watch this with me. If you don't like it, that's fine. Leave if you want to. And they were completely engaged in that movie the whole time. And so
that's right.
Yeah, I think it's
and the special effects in that movie. They were doing stunts, and you're like, man, that is good job. Good job.
Yeah. So if I can leave this world knowing that my girls have watched a Buster Keaton film, I'm fine with that. So,
that's right.
Yeah.
I watched over Christmas this year. It Happened on Fifth Avenue, which is a Christmassy movie, but again, 19 earlies. And I think it is prime to be remade. I think the storyline is very, very fun. But it got my wheels spinning of, I have not written a script since college. I don't anticipate ever writing a script again. And so, man, I think that one would be really fun, modernized. So watch it and write it.
How did you watch that movie?
I was at my in-laws' house. They had it on DVD.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was out there in the streaming world.
Oh, it might be. Yeah. It happened on Fifth Avenue.
Okay. Maybe like something like on Canopy, like with your library, local library, they have that's a pretty cool streaming service. Yeah. A quick recommendation for me. We started the TV show Shrinking on Apple TV Plus, starring Jason Segel and Harrison Ford. And it's from the creators, Bill Lawrence and Brett Goldstein, famously
Scrubs.
from Scrubs, and then Ted Lasso fame.
Of course.
And so it's I wouldn't say it's as good as Ted Lasso quite yet. We're only 2 episodes in, but it's definitely got that feel, comedy, drama, all the feelings. So we really enjoyed that. So that's a fun new show. I think people should check out. So
I think this Harrison Ford guy is going somewhere. I think he's got a few things coming out right now.
I don't know what it is, but he's got it. I don't know. He's got something. So
yeah.
Well, this wasn't kind of an additional question for you, kind of going into the movie we're going to talk about next week. But what age were you when you got married?
We were both 29.
Okay,
so we were a little bit older. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were a little bit on the older age too. I don't know. You probably were like in a lot of weddings before then, or even maybe your wife. So I don't know if you ever felt like you were always the groomsman and not the groom, but we're going to be talking about 27 Dresses, where that one is always the bridesmaid, never the bride. So that's starring Katherine Heigl and James Marsden. Yeah. Have you seen that one?
Oh, of course. Again, spoiler alert, the ending of that where everybody's wearing their bridesmaids. I think that is brilliant. I laughed so hard at that. I saw that one in the theater as well.
Well, not to give too much away for the discussion next week, but it had been a while since I'd seen this one. And it was a lot better than what Whitney and I remembered it being. We enjoyed it a bit more than I expected, for sure. So anyway, that will be a fun one to talk about.
Very fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing this. I know you're a busy man, and I appreciate
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Thank you for this.
Yeah, I'm glad you gave you a chance to watch one of your favorite movies. I didn't realize you liked it this much.
When I saw it on the list, I was like, I'm talking about this one. This one's mine.
Perfect. Well, don't forget to follow our podcast on your favorite music streaming platforms. And if you have time, rate and give us a review. It'll only take a few seconds to do so, and it would really help us out a lot. Thanks again, Andrew, and hopefully this cold weather doesn't hit you guys too bad.
Thank you. Good to see you, Nathan.
All right. Take care.